Okay. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
So let me.
Oh my gosh, Mama.
Are you ready?
I'm ready to go. Yes.
I may have to call Hassan.
Yeah, he said he's on the backstage. So
I'm not seeing him.
okay.
Can you call him?
Yeah. So, are you ready?
Tell him I'm not seeing him.
Okay, so see you, bro. Doctor said he's not seeing you. Are you online? Okay. Doctor, he's on backstage, he said. He said he needs to backstage. Doctor, are you hearing me?
I cannot see him.
You can't see him? He said he's on backstage, you just need to add him.
He needs to add.
He said, huh?
He needs to add. Tell him he needs to add.
Okay. Okay. Doctor, he said it says only the host can see him. You need to add him.
What?
Are you on the part 2 or part 1? Motion, UDP's motion. Because we fit. Yeah, go to part Go to part 2. Part 1 is finished. We took a break. Doctor, he's on part 1, so let me send him part 2. I thought you,
okay.
you sent him already, but
You got it?
yeah, I just sent him.
Okay, there he is. Good. Okay. Okay, go ahead. Let's begin.
All right, thank you guys again. Thank you, Dr. Conte. Thank you, Dr. Jallo, for
Thank you.
finally making it. I think Chor will still. Did you send the link to Chor?
I did.
Okay, so hopefully we'll have him on shortly. Now this phase we're going to talk about 2 items: motion to UDP's motion to reconsider, asking the Supreme Court to reconsider its decision of the throwing out of the election petition. We will also look at Dr. Carroll's letter to the president briefly. Now, I have to make this very clear. I'm going to talk about UDP's motion to reconsider. I want to be very clear that to let the audience know that I am not an attorney, I'm not a lawyer. I have no qualifications as a lawyer. So anything I say here is a personal opinion. It cannot constitute a legal advice. So I just want that to be very clear. UDP has petitioned the Supreme Court of the Gambia to reconsider its adverse decision against their petition, election petition. Motions to reconsider are very routine. They're very common. Actually, one of the common post decision motions to the courts to ask the court to revisit its own decision to of the verdict. Now, one has to be aware that UDP is taking a big risk by filing this motion for 2 reasons. Courts do not typically courts do not treat this kind of motion very favorably because to some extent it's a challenge to the court's own decision making. It is in effect telling the court and the judge that they are wrong in whatever decision they made. So typically, these kind of motions are not well received by the courts. They are legitimate. They are part of the process. They are lawful, but by their very nature, they are challenging the decision of the court itself. Now, motions to reconsider are usually grounded on 3 factors. First off, the party filing the motion must indicate that the judge or the court erred in law, in the way it applied the law to the case, or the judge erred in considering a particular fact. So there must be a factual or legal error in the judgment, in the judge's decision or the court's decision of the case. And the 3rd factor is that there must be new evidence that was available in the first trial, and this new evidence would have changed the outcome of the case. meaning if UDP had discovered a new evidence, a new fact, that if presented at the hearing of the petition, the outcome of the case would have been different. So that would be another factor for the courts to really consider this, reconsider their decision. Based on what I read about UDP's motion to reconsider, this bar has not been met, in my view, in my layman view. I don't think UDP's motion to reconsider met this bar for the court to reconsider its decision. Now, in Mr. Ture, the attorney for UDP, in his brief to the court, in his argument to the court, he talked about he talked about a lot of things, and I think he made a very compelling argument. But part of his argument is that the decision of the court was based on a decision emanating from the court itself. In legal terms, I think they call it in suo motu. In English, in US, it is often referred to as sua sponte. So the court made a ruling unto itself, by itself, without considering that the ruling that the court gave was not a prayer in front of the court by any of the parties. And this can be controversial, but I don't think that was even the case, because the judgment of the court was based on a law that has been referenced that has not been satisfied by the UDP's process. So I don't think the judge made the ruling sua sponte at all. But even if the judge ruled sua sponte, it is very legitimate and legal for that kind of a judgment to be delivered where a compelling public interest is at stake. So even in the case where Mr. Ture's argument for a unilateral decision made by the judge in the case of the sua sponte, I think that is still not a reason to reconsider this verdict, because the judges and the Supreme Court has the power to deliver a judgment sua sponte when a compelling public interest is at stake in a petition like this. That's pretty much what I want to say about this case. I think it will be interesting to see how it all plays out. I think we will hear about the rebuttal by the defense, Barrow's camp, in the next proceeding. But I think what also this implies is that, because I had some UDP supporters, particularly in the person of Mr. Dabo, what is his name? Yankuba Dabo, a UK-trained barrister, I believe, said that UDP should appeal to the ECOWAS court. Motions to reconsider usually can jeopardize your opportunity to appeal the case. If they are planning to appeal to the ECOWAS court, I would have recommended not to file a motion to reconsider, because when the Supreme Court ruled against their motion to reconsider, it could make it difficult for them to file for appeal to the ECOWAS court. So that is another risk they are taking. But again, like I said, we will look at all this in the next proceedings and how it unfolds. But in my layman's view, I don't think UDP is going to get much out of this. It's going to be the same. Barrow's government will continue for the next 5 years. UDP needs to focus on rebuilding their party and preparing for next election. Dr. Conte, Dr. Jallo, what do you guys think about this?
Well, I'll allow Dr. Jallo to come in.
No, well, go on. There's something in my mouth already.
Well, for me, previously, I stated, thank you. I stated, that Mr. Chor is back. So guess what, Mr. Jallo? You have competition here. You got a Sarah here.
Yep.
Be very careful.
Okay.
Honowadi.
Mr. Kor. How are you?
How much to say, Reonano?
No, we got full tea.
Okay, thank you. Welcome.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, doctor.
Just be very careful with him.
I will be. I can see he's even eating. So
I should have put my camera on hidden.
I got you. Thank you. Nice meeting you.
With the Port Authority, the ferry service doing maintenance on the ferries, the fullers will not be traveling through the water because they cannot swim.
Actually, it's affecting us in Nyomi, to be honest. I don't give him any chance to start, picking on us.
Absolutely.
Do you know they can play football now, the Jallos?
Oh yes, because they scored the first goal for us.
Absolutely.
That's amazing. I don't know how they were able to do that.
I don't know.
No, we have been there.
When?
We have been there since before 1965. We have been there.
What's the name?
Historically, even you look at Usman Jallo. Usman Jallo was a fine player. I myself, I was a fine player.
Okay.
We're talking about the Jallos. I just cannot remember a Jallo football player who ever scored a goal in the Gambia.
Usman, do you remember Usman Jallo?
Well,
On the 17th? On the 17th?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so for me, I had said that the lawyer should have asked for the Chief Justice to recuse himself from the case when his son represented IEC, right, Independent Electoral Commission. 2, from the grapevine that Usainu Dabo recommended Hassan to be the Chief Justice. So, but they never went on that route. But what I don't understand, I'm not a lawyer, I'm an accountant. So they are asking the Supreme Court to just contradict themselves on the ruling they made. Because I have limited knowledge on this. I'm baffled. They waited for how many days to come up with this? And now they want the court to reconsider. So I just want to pass this ball to someone because for me, UDP did this to themselves. So I don't have much to say on this.
Dr. Jallo, thank you, Dr. Conte. Dr. Jallo, you have anything to say on this?
Okay, I can just share some context here. Thank you, Dr. Conte, and welcome on board, Mr. Cole. I think the UDP has, as Keba has already highlighted, they have all what it takes is their constitutional right to go and take issues of this nature when they suspect that there was rigging in the election or something has gone wrong. So I think it's their constitutional right. But I think what is being at play here is what we call the reactance theory. The reactance theory is something that indicates that there is the need for an examination on the behavior and reluctance tiers. Because here, UDP, they are trying to stay to be relevant. And now they are trying to test the courts. But I was thinking if they were a formidable political party and they understand the law to that extent, it's not issue of what has gone wrong. But the issue is they were beaten fair and square by Barrow. Whatever happens, they should have taken it in good faith. But now coming back is going to haunt them and it's going to affect them negatively. Because now we are now going to head to the pool in April. I'm telling you, because this thing is a test on constitutionalism. It's a test on integrity. It's a test on our electoral process. If they come all to the 11th hour and now they're complaining that there has been a foul play, they should have placed this at the beginning because there was a revising court. Why didn't they exhaust all of those things? But they didn't because they were comfortable and they were convenient and they thought that they were winning because the numbers were out there, because they were in a crowd competition and now they lost it and they couldn't imagine. So now the issue is this route that they are taking has both a social and economical and a constitutional effects and a consequence on the economy of the Gambia. So now, if I'm UDP, even now, if everything lays bare, and now even the Supreme Court rules against it, and now they want to take to the, as you have stated earlier on, that they want to take the ECOWAS, they want to use the ECOWAS. I think, they are doing more harm than good because, to me, let us just allow everything to just lay low and just try to pursue another route because I think they have lost it. And on the issue, I would disagree with Dr. Conte on the issue of the Honorable Chief Justice Asanjalo and his son being at the representing IEC. I think when it comes to law, there is nothing like relationship because the attribution of relationship does not come to play because the son happens to be the lawyer representing the IEC. That has nothing to do with the relationship with the dad being the Chief Justice. He needs not to because what here been contested or been tested is the law, not a family relationship. And now if people are coming up with their unconscious conspiracy theory coming out there saying that now because it was a father and a son relationship, that's why the UDP lost. No, the UDP lost because the evidence that they have provided was not substantiated. It was not merited. If you assert, you have to prove. And UDP has not proven because what they are saying that Border lost because they were buying votes. Buying votes, every political candidate, they were all engaged in that. UDP, they were engaged in that. Adabara was engaged in that. SR Baifal and others were engaged with that. So I don't know when it comes to questioning how they were vote buying. Vote buying has been there for quite so long. It might not be evident. It might not be surfacing itself on the ground like that. But I think UDP has to go back to the drawing board to revisit themselves and see what it takes. Because let them accept that they have lost. They have lost. The government have voted against them. That's period. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jallo. Very well said. I just wanted to also add that at the time that the UDP announced the submission of their petition, the motion for the court to reconsider its decision, they also almost simultaneously released a press release cautioning their supporters not to castigate and attack the Supreme Court for the decision they made in throwing out the petition. They tried to reposition themselves as abiding by the rule of law and respecting the decision of the court. In my view, it looks like UDP is trying to achieve two things at the same time. Trying to challenge the decision of the court, at the same time trying to appeal to the Supreme Court for favors by all of a sudden speaking favorably about the Supreme Court. When, since the petition rejection, their supporters were openly attacking the Supreme Court and castigating it without the party coming out and stopping them or cautioning them to desist from what they were doing. So in my view, that kind of looks like double speaking. But also, it also tells you that UDP is really intent on revealing or making an argument for their case based on the evidence they may have gathered. At some point, they were even saying that even if they fail to make it to the court to argue on the merit of their case, they are going to go to the public directly and make their argument with the evidence they have. And I think that's probably what they should focus on. They should go to the public directly if they have anything to make an argument about, or go to the other relevant interested parties like the Human Rights Commission, even to the IEC, make their case to the IEC. These things, if they have anything that is credible and reliable evidence, I'm sure it will be considered in future elections. But continuing to fight the outcome of this election, to me, is pretty futile at this stage. And I don't think the Supreme Court is gonna change its decision on this. And even if I don't think there's a legal avenue for them to appeal to the ECOWAS court. But even if they do, I don't think they're going to succeed there either. The ECOWAS court is not going to overturn the election result of the Gambia. I can almost bet on that. Mr. Cho, do you have anything to say on this motion to reconsider?
Thank you very much. I just want to follow my brother's step. I am also not a legally minded person.
Okay.
my contribution is going to be based on using common sense and also trying to come out with issues that I think, if we had put in place, would have definitely helped us. But again, before I go into that, I want to say, actually, democracy is winning. And I have to say, thank you to the former government for trying to establish the institutions that will see us, put up the democratization process, because democracy is a process and we have to see it working. So UDP going to the courts help us to show that the Gambians are learning and they are trying to nurture that democratization process by taking a case to the courts, and they leave it to the mercy of the courts. Again, they're following the same laws for the court, for the case to be reviewed. That's also a process they are following. If they win, democracy is winning. If they lost, democracy and Gambia are winning. Because we are trying to tell the people that we are now maturing into democracy and following rule of law. And once we are able to accept that, we are changing attitude, and now we will not be pointing fingers on people to say dictator, dictator, dictator. Because the person whom you're pointing your finger to be a dictator is being helped by the very people who calling him a dictator to become a dictator. Like I said, IEC was never there before Jammeh. What was there was the local government permanent secretary being a returning officer. But having IEC, in as much as people think Jammeh controls it or there's a fear factor, that institution needs to be nurtured by building their capacity so that anybody who comes in now will follow the due process of the law. But here we are talking about subsidiary law and constitutional law. Because what they are challenging actually is electoral laws that have been flawed. But constitutional laws, I think, more, like I said, I'm a layman, but this is the difference. But what I now, before the elections, I've been advocating for something, that all political parties should come together and put up regulations, electoral laws, that also bring in financial fair play. In that way, we will learn from other schools of thought to allow government to give subvention to political parties that are contesting into presidential. Like, for example, it's 2 million. In fact, that will now give the IEC the power to audit them, to ask them where they have spent that money based on the political requirement. Any other person who is going to give any political party money or sponsor them, and we said a certain amount of money, like $500,000 is, more than that, it should be made known so that we know that these corrupt practices, these fraudulent acts are not done before elections. Whatever they are claiming is done before elections. And all the political parties were involved in it one way or another. NPP were using money to buy cooking pots, give it to them. Why didn't we look at who is giving them that cooking pot? APRC are trying to get here. People put money together, go to Adama Barrow. Why? Because if he wins, he's gonna get they're gonna get positions. UDP are going to places, building boreholes, building bakeries and stuff like that. Why are they doing it? In return for votes. So simply that's what's happening. But if we are able to control that and know exactly that this amount of money should be put into, the amount of money that actually goes into this last election is too much. one political party can purchase nearly 50 pickups. For example, if one pickup is costing $1 million, you're talking about $50 million. A political party that has been established less than 1 year, where do they get the funds? So we must have to put those things in place. But for me, UDP going to the courts and Adama Barrow actually not interfering, which is very true, in as much as I said it's incompetent, that is making Gambia win. It's making the democratization process and it's making rule of law works. How are we going to maintain that? How are we going to come in to make sure that this is put in place properly? Is the next question. But UDP, I think they are fighting a lost battle. That's my view. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chor. Very well said. Absolutely, yes. I think you are right. Election campaign reform, campaign finance reform is long overdue in the country. I do think IEC, the Independent Electoral Council, tried to do this some time ago prior to this past election cycle. It could not happen because I think the political parties themselves did not want it, particularly the opposition. I know UDP rejected it. They don't want to be comply with IEC's campaign finance laws because they don't want to be monitored by, they don't want government funding because I don't think they want to, just like they rejected the GRTS offer to give airtime, they rather will go to Ketfatu rather than accept the GRTS timeline for political campaign coverage. So in the same way, the campaign finance reform did not go through because, and I don't think it was only UDP. I think some other political parties did not want government funding because they don't want their campaign to be monitored or scrutinized by their sources of funding be available to the IEC. So we'll see how this issue plays out in future elections. But that's a very good point to bring out. I think that's probably all we want to say on this. Unless Dr. Conte, Dr. Gallo has something to add, I want to end this by briefly looking at Dr. Carroll's letter to the president.
I think Mr. Chor may have something to say, right?
Yeah, something just came in regarding that issue, but then, oh yeah, where we talk about the Chief Justice, the son, and Hussein Udab and so on. You see, people will preempt, because if you look at it, the Chief Justice and Hussein are from the same area, isn't it, Bansang? Yeah. And it has been said that he recommended his appointment when he was foreign minister. And then, you know, you have the son also, who is standing in for IEC. This is where conflict of interest comes in. People, that's where we fear about conflict of interest. And then this needs to be looked at seriously. I know some people are very professional because every status has got a role, and every role has got duties and responsibilities. So the Chief Justice, being a Chief Justice, is a status attached, a role, duties and responsibilities. But he is also a father to the lawyer representing IEC. So he has a duty, he has a status as a father, that status has a role and duties to the son. So there is where people fear conflict of interest, because how our society is set up. But other than that, I think UDP, if you look at it, we have to look at UDP. I have nothing against them as a political party, but they have also contributed immensely to some of the shortfalls in the democratization process and the laws that are put in place. A particular year that they don't accept the elections, they decided to boycott the elections. I think you can remember that in the National Assembly elections.
Yeah.
When they boycott the National Assembly election, they gave us the APRC, the ultimate power to control the assembly. So anything that we did, changes, additional amendment, addendums, it were all done on the right way because it was done in the House. So if they were there to still push and debate, other people will see light. We would not have gone to the area they're saying, Yaya Jammeh changed the constitution 51 times. It's not. It's changed by those people who are elected because they refused not to come. So that was also a loophole. Is it a learning point? Is it something that we should look at and not and avoid it? Again, even after 2016, when the new parliamentarian started, UDP had nearly 31 or 32 assembly members. But by the time we start moving, because at that time they got the majority, they were able to change the majority, the presidential age limit. They changed that. They were also able to change the fact that if you are a candidate and you fall out with your political party, you can still continue to be an independent or go anywhere you want. They changed it. But then when they decided to sack 9 MPs from their numbers, it reduced their authority in the National Assembly. So when the new constitution came in, they wanted it to go through. It couldn't because those 9 and the other 5 from other political parties went against it. So if they think this was a campaign, they should also look at themselves. They should look at what had happened in the past because 20 years they've been in the opposition. They've been working with the government. For me, I got nothing against a party which is in opposition because I think they help us to strengthen governance. But if you keep boycotting, if you keep, refusing to participate, this is where we end up. That is why now I am calling on individuals to come into the National Assembly. Let's elect people who got the capacity. Because normally people don't buy for National Assembly election. They want, especially the technocrats, the academicians. What they want to do is they want to wait for a president to appoint them into ministerial position, directors or permanent secretaries. But not knowing actually the most important place is at the legislative, where those laws are made, where those budgets are scrutinized, where the checks and balances are done. So that's what I wanted to add there, just to make sure that we know, because we're coming towards the National Assembly elections, which is very important.
Thank you, Mr. Chol. Thank you. Well said. I do agree with you that whenever there is conflict of interest or even the appearance of conflict of interest, we should be very cautious in proceeding. And I think if the UDP, other parties to the petition, truly believe there is a possibility of conflict of interest or the appearance of it, they should have brought this to the court. And I'm sure the court will take it up and then look at the issue. But obviously, yes, I am very particular about conflict of interest and the appearance of it. It can have very serious implications on our rule of law. Having said that, you have already underscored the importance of the National Assembly elections, which is coming up, and I think UDP is taking that quite seriously, like all other political parties like DOI and others. So I'm sure that will be rigorously contested, and we will have a very diverse and competent National Assembly to counter the powers of the executive and the judiciary as well. I now want to, Dr. Jallo, Dr. Conte, do you have anything to say? I want to move on.
Yeah, I just want to make an emphasis on what Mr. Chor has already highlighted on when it comes to campaign finance. I think I just want to make sure that the Gambia, we need to take it very serious that campaign finance laws, we need to establish them, which is very critical, because it will help us to, setting the limit of contributions. And then it also highlights issues of disclosure requirements, which is very critical because, politics and money, they are inseparable. But you also need to understand that along the way, we also have seen of recent interest groups lobbying at National Assembly lobbying at political parties so that they can also have a stake when a government comes into play. Because we have seen what actually happened. And they just concluded 2021 presidential elections. So many people vested interests have invested into these political parties because they knew that if a political party wins, they're going to be compensated with a position or they'll be given ambassadorial positions to others. So I think all of these things will help the IEC. If all of these laws are put into place, it will definitely help and curtail issues of campaign finance so that it doesn't go to the extreme. For instance, if you have a limitation on campaign contribution, it's very critical because you limit and then you also have an area whereby there's a disclosure. And then the disclosure, you can have requirements that are required so that every individual that contributes to a political campaign or a political party will be put into the public so that people will know who are these people. Because nobody, there is no free lunch in this world. But we need to understand that at least to sanitize our political landscape, we need to understand that some of these people that are out there, that are even investing so much millions of dollars into this political campaign, they have vested interest, and we have to be very careful because if these people, because they have already negotiated that I'm going to invest this, but if you turn out to win, this is what you're going to give me. So we will still keep on rolling. It seems like we are backpedaling our development, and it's not going to help us. For the Gambia to continue, and for the Gambia to excel, and for the Gambia to reach the hexagon of prosperity, we need to ensure that campaign finance is embodied, is to the extent whereby it is executed. It is implementable and it is even out there for everybody to see and adhere to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jallo. Thank you very much, guys. Last but not the least, I want to Dr. Carroll, Dr. Henry Carroll, the former Solicitor General of the Gambia. I think he's still the Solicitor General. I'm not too sure, but I still believe sure. Wrote a letter to the president congratulating him for his what Dr. Carroll calls a landslide victory. Dr. Carroll's papers are pretty interesting always. I always find them very interesting to read. Dr. Carroll is a well-read, legal-minded person. He studied in UK, I think Oxford and Cambridge, and this means dearly to him. He's always eager to reveal that. But what makes Dr. Carroll's writings quite interesting is that he uses a lot of Latin. We all know him for that. And the language he uses is very characteristic of lawyers. Lawyers are typically very archaic in the way they use language. You only have to look at legal documents and see how archaic and verbose legal people are. When you take legal writing, the first thing you come to realize is that lawyers are pretty archaic and verbose. They use a lot of verbiage in their writings and kind of very. So Dr. Carroll's writings are quite interesting from this perspective. It also smacks pretty well of the kind of sycophancy we saw under Jammeh's rule. I know Mr. Chol will disagree with that, but some of the language Dr. Carroll used in his letter to the president are very characteristic of Jammeh era remarks that people made. He called NPP our beloved and new NPP, and he called Mr. Barrow, President Barrow, as wise and visionary. Mr. Barrow's rule as a wise and visionary leadership. He actually used this phrase twice in his article. It reminds me of some of the accolades, some of the references made to Jammeh during his rule under his wise and visionary leadership. I'm sure Mr. Chor will recall those when those were very widely used on Jammeh. He also called this past election a two-man race. Instead of an election between 6 contenders, it was a race between UDP and NPP, which is largely true. I think many Gambians agree with that this election boiled down to a contest between NPP and UDP. He called NPP a novice political party that defeated UDP, which was just celebrating its silver jubilee 25 years of existence. So that was a remarkable feat for NPP, a very new party, to have defeated a well-established party like UDP. But also, this is not quite, Java was defeated by a coalition that just came into effect within a short while. But I think he clearly made a point that NPP made a great achievement by defeating UDP, a well-established party. And he also praised Barrow's government for establishing good governance, rule of law, and so much development within a short period of time since 2016. He called Barrow's leadership as a sterling leadership. Barrow has sterling leadership qualities. So pretty generous on praising Barrow here. Dr. Carroll also made a lot of references to a number of literary article materials. He made mention of Nobel laureate, Nigerian writer Wole Soyinka. He also made mention of Oliver Twist, as well as our own Dr. Peters, Gambian surgeon, novelist, and playwright, and poet. He compares Barrow to Oliver Twist, suddenly referring to Barrow's humble beginnings, much like Oliver Twist, who was an orphan. So I'm sure he was referring to Barrow's humble origins and his rise to the highest office in the country. He referred to Soyinka's writings, where Soyinka said, a tiger does not proclaim its tigritude, it pounces. So referring to Barrow as a doer, not a talker. And he backed this up with a Latin phrase which says, veni, vidi, vici. I came, I see, and I conquer. So clearly Barrow came and he saw and he conquered, becoming a man of action rather than a man of speech or talking. Pretty interesting article. He referred to Dr. Peter's second round, calling Barrow's election to the highest office of patriotic. I mean, he referred to people voting for Barrow as the highest patriotic act. Some will disagree with that, but I mean, that's what Dr. Carroll said. He referred to Plato's Republic, citing that the price wise men pay is for not participating in the politics of their countries is to be ruled by foolish men. That was quite interesting, but yeah, that's how Dr. Carroll put it. And I'm sure he meant that the wise men in the Gambia this time did not relent. They made sure they participated and that they are not being ruled by foolish men now because they took part in the politics of the country. Overall, I think Dr. Carroll wrote a very fantastic letter to the president. Certainly, the president would like his remarks to him, referring to his exemplary leadership, his adherence to rule of law. Again, the letter is pretty interesting to me because it is classic lawyer writing, I guess, verbiage, a lot of verbosity. But I think every Gambian should try to read his papers. I think he writes very well. He's very eloquent, highly educated. You will have to put up with his Latin, though, and you will have to put up with a lot of verbiage that he puts in his papers. But again, we all admire Dr. Carroll. I always take my time to read his papers. Whatever he writes, I like to read it. I'm sure you guys did not. You probably didn't get a chance to read his letter to the president, but it's still on Standard newspaper. If you want to go back and look at it, it's pretty interesting read for many reasons. But that's all I have today. Unless you guys have something to say, we're going to shut this down and we'll come back again next Sunday.
No, I cannot leave you go because I also have to go now. But I want to say something, and
Yes.
yeah, please, and then I will also leave.
Yeah.
First of all, is it Keba Jata? Is it your name?
Yeah, you got it right, Keba Jata.
Keba, I am so all of us belong somewhere. Dr. Conte said he actually supported the elections of Adama Barrow.
Yes.
Dr. Hassan Jallo, I'm not sure whether he's PDIS or because it's not APRC, because I am APRC, I would have known.
No,
And
now
you, Keba,
I'm an independent person now.
Independent.
I'm an
Keba,
independent person. I was a PDIS, but I'm an independent now.
I will deliberately accuse you of
I
being.
supported Barrow's election because I didn't want UDP to win.
Yes, so I will definitely allege you to say you are definitely NPP. Anyway, I want to say this. When I started, I've said, of course, we have different school of thoughts. You all know better than I do. And also, people are entitled to their opinion. Whatever he writes here, for me, is an opinion. And it's his democratic right to express, especially when you have free time. You got a pen in your hand, and you got as much papers as possible, and you got a lot of stuff to express. You read a lot of books. You can do a lot of quotations and write whatsoever. But other school of thought will stand at the other angle and see it in a different perspective. Is he a job seeker?
That's a job already. He's a
That's one. Yeah? I mean, have we not had this when Jammeh was in power from the same person?
Right.
And highly likely, if Adama Barrow is not here and he's still alive and still lecturing at the University of the Gambia, he will write a more formidable letter. Actually, a well-landed, respected Gambian. He wants everybody to see. I love him when he's on the video. But my conclusion is, this is a person who is entitled to his own opinion. But one thing, a landed person of his cannot only say that those who voted for Adama Barrow are wise and those who didn't are not. This is a landed person who should understand democratization process. During the process of choosing, everybody has a choice. But after electing, he becomes our president, even though we didn't vote for him. That should not go to a person who is a lecturer from Oxford University to express those kind of things. You're knocking down the confidence of the people. So everybody should be voting for the president. If you vote for him, you are wise. That's one thing. Another thing is, you and I and everybody here agreed that yes, he won the elections. But we still have issues that are pending, that is affecting the life of the Gambian people. Where does Dr. Carroll live? Is he living in England or somewhere in the Gambia or somewhere in Senegal? He's not living in the Gambia, is it?
I think he lives in Gambia. Yeah.
So now he's living in the Gambia, and as much as 5 murder cases took place just after elections. Just after 5 murder cases that they cannot even investigate and tell us who are responsible. Just after elections, the cost of living is escalating. The price of a bag of sugar from 1,800 to 2,000. So that is a very wise decision, isn't it? And not even looked at. We're still talking about bread, which was $7. It's now $10. A scarcity of bread, in fact, because of the price of flour or lack of scarcity, lack of flour. And other issues that I will keep on mentioning. We're talking about, others said 30 million euro on the service of 2 ferries. Others say, no, actually it's $30 million. Where is Dr. Carroll? He doesn't live in the Gambia. We're talking about paying $21,000 times 3 in order to qualify to become a teacher in the Gambia. Where we have seen a review of salary grade has gone up. We look at what now the teachers are complaining that it does not go incompatible with them as teachers. And we're talking about a shortfall, quoting my able Dr. J. Conte, of $9 million. Where are they going to get that from? Those who are giving the tax, the consultant, are telling us, actually, the government did not tell them where they're going to get the source of funding to fund that upgrading and increment of salaries. And Dr. Carol is writing such a wonderful letter that Mr. Keba Jata said is actually interesting and wonderful. I don't agree with you. I think it's an opinion, it's not a fact.
Thank you so much, Mr. Tor. Yes.
Okay, let me.
I have to take leave. I'm sorry, I have to take leave and go.
But before you go, you pick on the fullest.
Okay.
Yesterday,
All right. Okay.
Yesterday you picked on the fullest. It said the Sarah will eat futo.
Yeah.
And all you have to worry about is put fish on top. I think you said something about the fullest. Whether it's something in bread or something like that. So, and then Mr. Jallo is here. But in all seriousness,
thank you guys. Let me add briefly that Mr. Tori, you are right. But I look at Dr. Carroll's. These are quite very opinionated and subjective writings. But I look at there's a lot of literary value to his writing. If you look at it from a purely literary perspective, there's a lot of sycophancy in it, but there's some literary value to it, and I look at it from that perspective only also. But you are absolutely right. It can be quite controversial.
By the way, he's not the Solicitor General. Habib Tomasi is
He's now.
Yeah, he's now a lecturer at the Gambia University.
Okay, well, I guess he might be back somehow.
I hope not.
With this kind of letter to the president.
I have to take leave, guys. Dr. Jallo, thank you very much. Dr. Conte, Keba, thank you very much. And can you just remind me which platform is this? Because I need to go there and share it.
The Gambia is Perspectives. I will send it to you. I will send the link to you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much.
And also, please, next Sunday, we want you to come back too.
Yeah, fine. Send me a link, and I'm really humbled to be invited to come and participate, share the same platform with my landed friends and brothers. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. We'll see next Sunday, man.
All right.
Okay, you take care. So, does Abba Hassan, Dr. Hassan has anything?
Yes, I have something to say. I know it's a very good piece. I have not put my eyes on it, and thank you, Keba, for sharing. I think when an individual writes, there is three dimensions on individual rights. There is what we call the locus of causality, and then the stability dimension, and also on the globality dimension. That is based on the Wiener's model. So if we go back to the Wiener's model, what does the locus of causality refers to? It says, it refers to individuals' judgment, perception of how they perceive things. Whether the outcome was caused by their own actions or inactions, because they are writing because of what they perceive to be true. And this is what they see. And then we also have what we call the stability dimension. So the stability dimensions will always denote that where an individual is supposed to address whether the course of some events change over a time because of an individual comes in and people voted in for him. It's an opinion piece. And an opinion piece, people can see it, they can weigh it, they can assess it any way they see it. Because most of the time when you write and it favors the president, people will always state that he's a job seeker. So many people have done that to me. But the issue, they need to understand, they need to put a dichotomy on what a job seeker is and who is seeking and who is not seeking a job. Because there are people that have been in government and been working in government for quite so long, and they left the government. So would you call those people to be job seekers? No, because there are people that are job seekers out there. But the issue is when on individual rights, that individual rights based on his or her perception or what he perceived to see to be true. And that doesn't mean that he's trying to emphasize that person is the best, but he's trying to share his thought of mind. So now when it comes to writing, there is the need for where we captivate the art of critique. So you can come in and look at the substance of what that individual writes, and then you can counter it. There are so many issues that are out there in the Gambia. I think sometimes we don't need to write to boost an individual's image, because otherwise, when we are doing so, that has to cause what we call a reputational risk and a reputational damage on that individual or to yourself. Because sometimes there is so much to write, because we look at the Gambian context, particularly we here on Gambian perspective, we look at the context. There are so many issues, burning issues that needs to be written. And there is so much examinations or some research that needs to be done. Because sometimes we tend to adhere to hearsay or look at certain perceptions or grapevine that are out there. But the issue, how do you counter those grapevines and make sure that you look at the substantiation of the facts? That is the material evidence that have been presented before your eyes, and then you look at issues that needs to be tackled. We have so much ugly belly, so much burning issues in that country. I know people can write, they can do whatever it takes. Dr. Carroll can write, absolutely, because he's a literary genius. He has a background in Latin. He's very good in that, because whenever he speaks Latin. Sometimes, that's how he is. But when it also comes to the globality dimension, it's whether the cause of an outcome is generalizable, whether it is generalizable. Because when somebody writes, you look at it whether it's generalizable or whether it's been individualized. That's so that because people have their way of writing. But it's good to write. It's not bad, but at least we can attack the substance of the writing and not the individual. And then I think the Gambia has so many good things that we can talk about. There are so many bad things that we can talk about. Because earlier on, when you began the show, there were issues of corruption. I was not opportune to join in because I came late, and my apologies for that. But I just wanted to see a context. Just a minute. Just give me a minute.
Okay.
So issues of corruption, the stance of corruption in the country. I think sometimes we tend to talk too much about it, not even understanding the facts. Because we understand that there are people, as Dr. Conte will always say, there are people that would always live beyond their means. We can see that. There are people that live beyond their means. We can see that. But the issue is, Dr. Conte, you look at his background, is accounting. And he's very good in fraud issues like that. So people like him should be engaged so that he can share his context on issues of how do you contain and deter and detect fraudulent activities when it comes to corruption and corrupt practices. He might be somebody that could be critical, but the Gambia could also use best use of him. I'm not trying to give him a position here or trying to campaign for him to be given position in government. But the issue is he could be a resource person. He could add value to the Gambia when it comes to that dimension. Sometimes I might not agree with him with certain in his points of arguments, but notwithstanding, he has something that the Gambian can learn, because he always take people into other areas and try to engage people so that they can come and provoke. But people will not even listen. The issue is it is coming from Kewa Jata. No, I'm not going to listen to him. So because it's not something that really that pleases them, and people always goes for something that pleases them. But when it comes to corruption, it's endemic. It's an other pandemic for the Gambia. It's not only COVID, but corruption is the pandemic. It's the issue that is the ugly belly that we need to address. Because what is going on? Because sometimes I understand that we don't have audit trails, and from a financial background or from an accounting background, we don't have an audit trails, and that is something that is missing. And in the Gambian context, when it comes to governance and financial resource management, there is the need to go back to the drawing board and make sure that all of those things are put in place, because that's the only thing that we can deter and detect. But we will keep talking about corruption because we see a civil servant that earns nothing less than 5,000 a month. You look at that individual, has 3 wives, has 3 compounds. Where is that person getting that money? And has 3 different cars, and have 3 sons that are attending universities. It's evident that there is corrupt practice. There are certain things that when it comes to procurement contract and stuff like that, because when you are a head of an institution, you are within the corridor of powers. You are somebody who has that influence, but there are certain things that goes, outside that people will not be able to detect and deter. But the issue is there is so much that we are losing, and we are losing big when it comes to public resource funding. The issue is when we need to go back to the drawing board and see what is actually triggering corruption. Because the issue is, when it comes to issues like that, we need to examine. And when we need to examine, we examine behaviors. We examine behaviors both based on the internal, external, and the global perspective of individuals. And then the issue has to go back to what we call ethics. Integrity has to be rolled back, because it's very important when it comes to governance. People need to understand why. Because when you engage in corrupt practices, it is not you are doing more harm to the economy than even to yourself. Because even you are going to be affected. Your kids are going to be affected. whether it's going to be directly or indirectly, because when you take $1 or one butut from the government coffers, that means you are denying others from having access to public funds and activities. So there is the need for people to go back to the drawing board and understand that anything that takes out from the government coffers that does not belong to me, it's me. I'm doing more harm to the economy, and I'm doing more harm to the generation unborn. So therefore, there is the need to go back and do what is right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Jallo. We're going to end it here. Thank you again for coming. We'll meet again next Sunday. Thank you guys for everything.
Okay, I will be sending this stuff to you. So I now figure out how, after we end, how I can go to the past broadcast and put it on Facebook. It's much easier.
Okay, sounds good. All right. See you
Thank
guys.
you. Take care.
Thanks, man.